if you find the ambiguities of modern romance to be a source of frustration, then prepare yourself for a journey into an entirely different world of complexity. We are about to delve into the realm of Victorian courtship, a time when finding a partner was not left to chance, but was instead a meticulously choreographed ballet of propriety. The 1850 were governed by an intricate labyrinth of unspoken codes, where chaperones acted as vigilant guards, overseeing every single moment exchanged between the sexes. Social regulations were so detailed that they dictated every glance and every gesture. No action was too small to be governed by these strict rules of conduct. In this highly structured environment, the rules were not merely suggestions, they were everything. The system of finding a partner depended on adhering to them without fail, and breaking these rules could lead to dire consequences, far more permanent and devastating than simply being left on read. A ruined reputation could last a lifetime. Imagine a society where every public space was a stage, and every interaction was a performance under the harsh lights of scrutiny. This was the reality of the Victorian era, a time when the simplest of actions were laden with profound meaning. A polite nod, a subtly dipped brim of a hat, was not just a greeting, but a calculated message, its intention to be decoded and judged. The social landscape was a minefield of potential missteps. Accepting a small, seemingly innocent gift from an unsuitable gentleman was not a minor faux pas. It was a catastrophic error in judgment that could shatter a young woman's reputation, a thing as fragile as spun glass, and irrevocably alter the course of her entire life, closing doors that could never be reopened. Before we proceed, if these explorations into the quiet corners of history are bringing you some peace, a simple like or a subscription would be a wonderful encouragement. I am endlessly fascinated by the idea of this shared experience, a global community finding rest in the same stories. It truly amazes me to think of you all listening from different corners of the world, in different time zones. So, I invite you to leave a comment, letting me know where you are and what time it is as you tune in. Now, find that perfect, comfortable position, allowing the day's tensions to melt away as we prepare for our journey. The thought of this worldwide audience settling down for the night is a remarkable thing. Let yourself become comfortable now. Take a slow, deliberate breath and feel the full weight of your body as it sinks deeply into the surface beneath you. Be it a mattress, a sofa, or a simple chair, let the sounds of the present moment fade into a gentle hum as we allow our minds to drift backward in time. Our destination is the very heart of the British Empire, the bustling, sprawling metropolis of London. In the year 1855, we are about to immerse ourselves in a world both strangely familiar and yet profoundly different, and I can almost guarantee that by the time our story concludes, you will feel a newfound and deep appreciation for the simple, comforting softness of your modern mattress. To understand the world we are entering, we must first adjust our vocabulary. The Victorians had a very common phrase, to make love, but its meaning was entirely different from our modern interpretation. In the 19th century, making love had nothing to do with physical intimacy. It referred to the delicate and formal art of courtship. It was the process of wooing, of navigating a complex social gauntlet with grace and precision. This was not a casual affair, but a high art form, a delicate negotiation of manners and intentions. If a young man or woman hoped to not just survive, but succeed in the Victorian dating scene, mastering these intricate and unwritten rules was not merely an advantage, it was an absolute necessity. Congratulations, you have awakened not in the city you know, but in Queen Victoria's London, in the vibrant month of May, 1855. The air itself is different here, carrying a distinct weight and texture. A thick blanket of coal smoke, the ghost of a million hearths, hangs in the morning sky, mingling with the natural fog to create a pearlescent haze. The soundtrack of the city is not the drone of engines, but the rhythmic, sharp clatter of iron-shod hooves striking the cobblestones just beyond your window. And then there is the aroma of the city, a complex, pervasive scent that is an entity all its own, a constant reminder of the raw, untamed nature of this great metropolis. The primary note in London's unique perfume emanates from the River Thames, which flows like a dark ribbon just a few streets away. This is no idyllic waterway. It is the city's main artery, and its primary sewer, burdened with the untreated waste of 2.5 million souls. On a day like today, as a gentle warmth begins to settle over the city, the river's potent fragrance drifts upward, weaving its way through the streets and alleys. It is an unavoidable presence, seeping through the sash of your bedroom window, with an insistence that makes your nose wrinkle involuntarily. You instinctively pull the heavy wool blankets higher, a futile but comforting gesture against the olfactory assault. The most welcome news upon your arrival in this era is that your circumstances are quite favorable. You are a young woman of 22 years, and your family, the Hartwells, occupies a respectable position within the burgeoning middle class. Your name is Eleonora. Your father is the proprietor of a small but prosperous haberdashery, a business that ensures your family is comfortably fed and clothed, though not so wealthy as to afford a life of complete leisure. You exist in that specific social stratum that values hard work and propriety above all else, a world of modest ambitions and carefully maintained appearances, far from the desperation of poverty, but equally distant from the idleness of the true aristocracy. However, there is a significant counterpoint to this good fortune, a shadow that hangs over your comfortable existence. You are a woman living in the year 1855, and for someone of your station, this means your entire destiny, your security, and your social standing are almost entirely contingent upon a single, all-important achievement: securing a suitable husband. This is the primary vocation for which you have been raised. The pathway to this goal is not a straightforward one. It is a bewildering maze of social conventions, a journey with rules as complex and precarious as attempting to perform a waltz, while simultaneously juggling a full set of delicate porcelain teacups. One misstep could mean failure. You stretch your limbs beneath the layers of bedding, the coarse texture of the cotton, sheets of familiar friction against your skin. A heavy quilt lies upon your chest, its weight a constant, pressing reminder of the morning's defining feature. The cold. In this house, there is no such thing as central heating. That particular luxury will not be invented for many decades to come. Consequently, every single day begins with a pervasive, bone-deep chill that seems to radiate from the very stone of the walls. It is a damp, seeping cold that no amount of blankets can fully repel, a fundamental reality of life that you have long since learned to accept as the unavoidable start to every morning. The first line of defense against this persistent chill is already hard at work. Your family's housemaid has been awake since the pre-dawn hour of 5 o'clock, her day beginning with the arduous task of lighting the coal fires in the downstairs rooms. Now you can hear the distinct sound of her heavy, determined footsteps ascending the wooden staircase. She is hauling a coal scuttle up to your bedroom, a vital but back-breaking ritual. That single bucket, when full, weighs approximately 30 pounds, and she will make this journey dozens of times, up and down these same stairs, before her long and physically demanding day finally comes to a close, all to keep the house running. The bedroom door creaks open on its old hinges, and Mary, the housemaid, slips quietly into the room. You can see the physical strain in her arms as she carries the heavy burden of the coal, her hands already smudged a deep black with soot from the morning's work. You notice a slight favoring of her left shoulder, a subtle sign of the chronic strain caused by the repetitive, heavy lifting her job demands. She kneels with practiced ease before your fireplace, her movements quick and efficient as she arranges the kindling and lumps of coal. Soon, a spark catches, blossoms into a flame, and a small, welcome sphere of orange light begins to push back against the room's oppressive cold. "Good morning," Miss Mary says, her voice soft as she rises and wipes her sooty hands on the front of her sturdy apron. Her next words, however, carry a weight that immediately dispels the last vestiges of sleep. "Your mother has instructed that you are to dress properly today." She pauses for a moment before delivering the crucial piece of information, the reason for the special instruction. "The Weatherbys will be calling this afternoon," she explains, adding the most important detail, "and they are bringing their son." The simple announcement hangs in the air, instantly changing the entire character of the day ahead and setting your mind racing. Your stomach performs a nervous little flutter at the news. The Weatherbys. You have, of course, heard talk of their son, Thomas. At 26, he is of a suitable age, and he has only recently returned to England after a long posting in India, where he served as a clerk for the formidable East India Company. Your mother has been dropping subtle hints about this potential visit for weeks, her strategic comments leaving no doubt as to the true nature of this impending social call. This is not a casual visit for tea and pleasantries. You understand its purpose with perfect clarity. This is an inspection, a formal viewing, and you are the one being inspected. You sit up in bed, and the cool air immediately touches your shoulders through the thin cotton of your nightgown. The nascent fire is beginning to make a difference, but the room's pervasive chill will not truly recede for at least another hour. Your gaze follows Mary as she moves about the room, her purpose clear as she begins to lay out your clothes for the day. She does not select your usual attire. Instead, she retrieves your finest day dress, a garment of deep blue wool, adorned with a row of tiny, delicate mother-of-pearl buttons. You remember vividly that it took your mother 3 full months of careful saving to afford the fabric for this very dress. "Mary," you say, your voice still carrying the slight roughness of sleep. "What do you know of the Weatherby son?" She casts a quick, cautious glance toward the closed door, a silent acknowledgement of the need for discretion, before leaning in a little closer to share what she knows. "Well," Miss, she begins in a hushed tone, "I've heard from their housemaid that he's got all his teeth, which is more than can be said for most gentlemen his age." She also relays that he is not a heavy drinker, though he does possess a notable fondness for cigars. This back-channel gossip from the servants' network is often the most honest intelligence one can gather. Mary pauses in her work, her hands momentarily still, as she arranges your corset on the bed. She then adds a final, crucial piece of information, a detail that adds a layer of intrigue to the portrait of the man you are about to meet. "Of course," she continues, her voice still low, "he has been away in India for these past 4 years." This fact is presented as both an explanation and a potential warning. So she concludes, it's possible he might have picked up some strange ideas about things. The implication is clear. His time in a foreign land, serving the powerful East India Company, may have changed him in ways that are not entirely English. Your eyes fall upon the corset, and you feel a familiar sense of weary resignation. This is the unyielding foundation of every respectable woman's daily attire, a formidable contraption of stiff whalebone stays and tightly woven cotton. Each morning, Mary will meticulously lace you into this device, cinching it until your ribs are compressed and your waist is sculpted into the idealized hourglass silhouette demanded by current fashion. The result is a figure that is publicly admired but privately endured. It means you will spend the entire day with the persistent sensation of a firm, unyielding grip around your midsection, making every breath a conscious, shallow effort. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, your bare feet making contact with the cold, smooth oak floorboards. These wide planks, polished by a century of use, remain stubbornly chilled regardless of how brightly the fire burns. As you stand, Mary is immediately at your back, her skilled fingers already working to unlace your cotton nightgown. This complete lack of inhibition is entirely normal. The concept of personal privacy, as a modern person would understand it, simply does not exist for a woman of your class. Mary has attended to you in this intimate way thousands of times, and will continue to do so until the day you marry, at which point this duty will pass to your own lady's maid. The dressing ritual commences with the chemise, a simple, thin undergarment of plain cotton that serves as a barrier between your skin and the formidable corset. Next comes the main event. Mary expertly positions the corset around your waist and begins the methodical process of pulling the long laces, threading them through the eyelets with practiced efficiency. With each decisive tug, you feel the space in your chest constrict, and your breathing instinctively becomes more shallow, more controlled. By the time she has finished her work, you are taking small, careful sips of air that seem to stop at the top of your lungs. A deep, satisfying breath is a physical impossibility. Not too tight, Mary, you manage to say, the words slightly clipped due to the garment's constriction. It is a familiar, almost ritualistic protest. Both of you understand that the corset is already laced as loosely as the dictates of fashion will permit. Any less, and the desired silhouette would be compromised. Of course not, Miss Mary replies dutifully, her tone reassuring. Your mother gave specific instructions that you should be able to speak clearly. When the gentleman calls this single directive, reveals the practical calculus of the day. Beauty must be achieved, but not at the complete expense of the social functionality required for the performance ahead. Once the corset is secure, the process of building the fashionable shape continues with layer upon layer of additional garments. First, a bustle pad, essentially a small, firm pillow, is tied around your waist at the back, designed to push your skirts out into the exaggerated, bell-like silhouette that is currently in vogue. Following this come the petticoats. You will wear 3 of them today, each one made of starched cotton, adding not only bulk and shape, but also considerable weight. By the time Mary finally lowers your actual dress over your head, you are already encumbered by approximately 15 pounds of fabric and structural underpinnings. The final elements of the ensemble are your shoes and stockings. The shoes are fashioned from soft, buttery kid leather, but they are entirely flat. The raised heel will not become a fashionable item for women for several more decades. They are not designed for comfort or for walking any significant distance. Instead, they feature a row of tiny pearl buttons up the side, which Mary must fasten for you using a special, long-handled hook. Encased in their cotton stockings, your feet feel secure, but are already anticipating the pinch of discomfort. These are not shoes for strolling. They are shoes for sitting gracefully in parlors and taking short, delicate, well-mannered steps. As Mary undertakes the final, elaborate task of styling your hair, the reality of the afternoon ahead crystallizes in your mind. Your hair is parted with severe precision down the middle, then swept back into a low chignon with carefully arranged ringlets framing your face. while she pins and arranges each card. You reflect on the true nature of the Weatherby's visit. This is not a social call. It is an audition. The role you are auditioning for is that of a wife, a position for life. The interview will be conducted in your family's front parlor, where you will be expected to make polite, intelligent conversation, while every word, gesture, and expression is scrutinized by two sets of parents. You contemplate the branching paths that diverge from this single afternoon. If Thomas Weatherby, the gentleman in question, finds you to be a suitable candidate, the next step will be for him to formally ask your father for permission to call on you. This is not a request made of you, but of your patriarchal head of household. Should your father grant his consent, only then will the official process of courtship begin. This formal period of getting acquainted could last anywhere from a few fleeting weeks to several long months. And during this entire time, you will never, not for a single moment, be left alone with him. Every word will be spoken under the ever-present, watchful eye of a chaperone. Mary steps back to admire her work, and you lift a small hand mirror from your dressing table to inspect the final result. The face that stares back is a carefully constructed canvas of modesty and virtue. Your skin is fashionably pale, a clear signifier that you do not perform outdoor labor like a common servant. Your lips remain their natural hue, as the use of cosmetics is considered highly improper for a respectable unmarried lady, a mark of theatricality or loose morals. The overall effect is precisely as intended by the era's stringent standards. You project an aura of pure innocence, demure modesty, and the unmistakable polish of good breeding, a silent advertisement of your suitability for marriage. Breakfast is brought to you on a tray, a meal dictated as much by propriety as by sustenance. It consists of a bowl of porridge with a sparing splash of cream, a slice of toast with butter, and a cup of tea so bracingly strong it feels capable of stripping paint. The porridge is bland but filling, the toast a small pleasure with the aroma of the cook's fresh morning bake still clinging to it. You eat with slow, deliberate movements, constantly mindful of two things: the unforgiving tightness of your corset, which makes any large bite uncomfortable, and the dark fabric of your dress, which would betray the smallest, most unfortunate spill, ruining the day's pristine presentation before it has even truly begun. Shortly after your meal, your mother materializes in the doorway. At 45, she retains a handsome appearance, though the cumulative weight of bearing children and the constant, quiet hum of financial worry have etched a delicate map of fine lines around her eyes. She wears her second-best dress of dark brown wool, and her hair is styled like yours, but with a severity that speaks of her maternal authority. "Good morning, dear," she says, her voice calm but purposeful as she steps into the room and closes the door behind her, creating a private, conspiratorial space. "We need to have a little talk before this afternoon," she announces, and you know to give her your undivided attention. You set your teacup down gently, recognizing the familiar preamble to a session of important strategic instruction. Now you understand the purpose of the Weatherbys. Visit your mother begins, her tone direct and devoid of romantic sentiment. As she settles herself on the edge of your bed, Thomas is in need of a wife, and you are in need of a husband. She presents the situation not as a matter of love or passion, but as a practical alliance, a transaction of mutual convenience. It is a pragmatic arrangement, she continues, but that does not preclude it from being a pleasant one, provided you both conduct yourselves with the utmost propriety. This is the unvarnished truth of your world. Your mother smooths an imaginary crease from her skirt, her composure absolute, as she outlines the key intelligence she has gathered. "I have been in correspondence with Mrs. Weatherby," she reveals, "and she has shared some pertinent facts about her son that you ought to know. She then proceeds to list his qualifications, as if reading from a prospectus. He is well educated. He possesses excellent prospects for advancement within his company, and he has managed to save a considerable sum during his time in India. She pauses to let this sink in. Furthermore, according to his mother, he is quite eager to settle down and establish a family of his own, a crucial point, confirming his serious intentions. You offer a quiet nod of understanding, though inside, your stomach is a flutter of nervous butterflies. The phrase starring a family is a well-understood euphemism, a polite and socially acceptable veil, drawn over the physical realities of the marital bed. It is a subject of immense importance, yet one that is never, ever discussed directly between a mother and her unmarried daughter. It is the great unspoken truth that hovers like a silent, ever-present shadow over every ritual of courtship, a mystery you are expected to embrace with quiet compliance, rather than inquisitive apprehension. The thought of it is both abstract and overwhelmingly imminent. Now your mother continues, her voice taking on a tone of firm instruction. There are several rules you must adhere to this afternoon. Without exception, she holds up a finger to emphasize the first point. You must not, under any circumstances, accept a gift from him, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. This is a critical point of etiquette. A gentleman should not be offering presents to a lady to whom he is not formally engaged, and for you to accept such a gift would suggest an improper encouragement of his attentions, a forwardness that could damage your reputation. It is a clear signal of your virtue. This strict prohibition is not merely your mother's personal opinion. It is doctrine drawn directly from the popular etiquette manuals that she studies with the devotion of a biblical scholar. These books are the ultimate authorities on social conduct. One such volume, The Young Lady's Friend, which was published back in 1837, offers a specific and dire warning on this very subject. It cautions its female readers that the acceptance of one small gift will inevitably lead to the offer of another, which will in turn be interpreted by the gentleman as encouragement to offer their hearts to you, a premature intimacy that must be avoided at all costs. Second, your mother states, her expression serious, you are not to touch him in any manner whatsoever. The rule is absolute and leaves no room for interpretation. Physical contact is a currency to be guarded with the utmost jealousy. There will be no shaking of hands unless he is being formally introduced by your father. At that very moment, even then, the contact must be brief, a fleeting brush of gloved hands. If he should offer you his arm, she concedes. You may rest your hand upon it lightly, but otherwise, your hands must remain properly folded in your lap at all times. Every gesture must be one of restraint and modesty. You momentarily imagine how utterly bizarre these strictures would appear to the young people of a future generation, for whom casual physical contact is a normal part of social interaction. In your world of 1855, however, any touch between an unmarried man and woman is a matter of profound seriousness. It is a boundary that is rarely crossed, even for a couple who are formally engaged to be married. The permissible physical interactions are severely limited. They might be allowed to hold hands or perhaps, under the watchful gaze of a chaperone, exchange a chaste and fleeting kiss. Anything more would be a shocking breach of decorum and a stain on the lady's character. Third, your mother continues, ticking off the points on her fingers. You must allow him to lead the direction of the conversation. This is a sign of proper deference. However, do not be afraid to demonstrate your intelligence. This is the delicate part of the dance. He is an educated man, she reasons, and will therefore appreciate a woman who is capable of discussing topics beyond the trivialities of the weather. But this comes with a critical warning. You must not contradict him directly. Even if you hold a differing opinion, you must find gentle, circuitous ways to express your viewpoint without creating conflict or appearing argumentative. This instruction highlights the precarious balancing act. A woman is expected to perform. You must project enough intelligence to be considered an engaging companion, but not so much that you risk being perceived as unfeminine, intimidating, or even threatening to your male counterpart. Conversely, displaying too little intellect could lead to the equally undesirable conclusion that you are dull, vapid, or simply stupid. It is a tightrope walk between two perilous extremes, a performance of carefully calibrated intellect and femininity. This is not a new skill you are learning for the afternoon. It is a delicate art that you, like all young women of your class, have been practicing for your entire life. Your mother stands and reaches over to adjust a single curl near your ear. Her touch a final, encouraging gesture. Finally, she says, her voice softening slightly, "Always remember that he is assessing you just as much as you are assessing him. This is not a one-way inspection." Pay close attention to the small things she advises, her words filled with the practical wisdom of experience. Observe how he treats the servants. Notice how he speaks to your father. See how he responds when a small thing does not go exactly as planned. Her point is clear. These minor details will reveal far more about his true character than any amount of polite parlor conversation. Having delivered her instructions, your mother's focus shifts to the practical stage management of the event. She stands up, brushing a piece of imaginary lint from her dark wool skirt. The Weatherbees are expected to arrive at 3 o'clock. Precisely, she states, leaving no room for tardiness. We shall serve tea along with the small seed cakes that cook prepared yesterday. Every detail has been predetermined. You will be seated on the settee near the window, she directs, as the light there is most flattering. I shall occupy the chair nearby her role. As chaperone is established, your father will join us after he has concluded his private business discussion with Mr. Weatherby. After your mother departs, you are left with several hours to pass before the afternoon's crucial performance. You make your way downstairs to the family's modest library, a room that is, in truth, little more than a small study containing 2 bookcases and a cozy window seat. You select a volume of poetry from the shelves, an activity deemed perfectly suitable and edifying for a young lady. Novels, by contrast, are still viewed with a degree of suspicion, considered potentially corrupting to the female mind. You settle into the window seat and attempt to focus on the verses before you, but your thoughts repeatedly drift away, circling anxiously around the impending visit. The house around you hums with the quiet industry of domestic preparation. From the kitchen below, you can hear the distinct clatter of cook banging pots and pans as she begins her work on the midday meal. Outside, the housemaid is diligently sweeping the front steps, a chore that must be performed twice a day to combat the constant assault of coal dust from the air and hoarse droppings from the street. In his study, your father is hunched over his account books, his pen scratching as he meticulously balances the shop's finances. The air is filled with the layered sense of a well-kept home, the faint acrid smell of the coal fires, the sweet aroma of beeswax furniture polish, and the clean, herbal fragrance of the lavender water your mother uses to freshen the household linens. From your perch in the window seat, you watch the steady stream of life on the London street outside. A milk cart rumbles past on the cobblestones, its driver calling out his wares in a loud, clear voice that easily penetrates the window glass. 2 ladies, their arms linked in companionship, stroll by, their full skirts swaying in a graceful rhythm With each step they take, you can immediately tell from the superior quality and cut of their fabric that they belong to wealthier families than your own. A few paces behind them, as custom dictates, walks their maid, her arms laden with their parcels, maintaining a respectful and unobtrusive distance. A gentleman guides his horse at a smart trot down the street, his posture perfectly erect in the saddle, his tall top hat positioned at a precise angle. He is impeccably dressed in the standard daytime attire for a man of his class, a dark coat with tails paired with light-colored trousers. As he passes your window, his eyes briefly meet yours. Though you are complete strangers, he acknowledges your presence by politely touching the brim of his hat in a small, respectful salute. This is a normal and expected courtesy. Gentlemen are taught to offer this minor gesture of deference to all ladies they pass, a small but important thread in the complex fabric of public etiquette. The morning hours stretch on, each one feeling longer than the last. You attempt to occupy your time with the portfolio of skills expected of a properly brought-up young woman. You read a few more poems. You assist your mother in arranging freshly cut flowers for the front parlor, and you spend some time at the pianoforte, practicing a piece you have been working on. Playing a musical instrument is one of the key accomplishments for a lady, alongside the ability to speak a little French, to do fine needlework, and to produce passably pleasant watercolor sketches. The goal is not to achieve true brilliance in any of these areas, but rather to demonstrate a level of competence that signals a genteel and proper education. Lunch is a simple and restrained affair, consisting of cold meat left over from the previous day's supper, along with bread, cheese, and an assortment of pickled vegetables. You eat sparingly. This is partly a practical matter, as the tight lacing of your corset makes consuming a large meal physically uncomfortable, but it is also a result of the nervous energy that has been building all morning, leaving you with very little appetite. Your mother keeps up a steady stream of chatter about the neighbors and the latest local gossip, but you can perceive the tension beneath her cheerful facade. She, too, is nervous. A good marriage for you would not only secure your future, but also alleviate several of the family's persistent financial worries. The pressure is immense. At 2:30, your mother declares that it is time for the final preparations to begin. You return to your room, upstairs, to inspect your appearance one last time in the mirror. Mary has anticipated your needs, having laid out a pair of fresh white cotton gloves that button neatly at the wrist. Beside them rests your small locket, the only piece of jewelry considered appropriate for an unmarried lady who is receiving daytime visitors. The locket is a treasured item containing a miniature, painted portrait of your maternal grandmother. You fasten it around your neck, letting it rest just below the high, modest collar of your dress. You take a moment to practice the simple act of sitting down, a maneuver that is far more challenging than it sounds given the sheer volume and weight of your clothing. There is a specific technique required to do it gracefully. The trick is to lower yourself slowly and deliberately onto the settee, allowing your voluminous skirts to settle around you in an attractive and aesthetically pleasing arrangement, rather than bunching up awkwardly. Once seated, you are to fold your hands demurely in your lap. Rising again is an equal challenge, requiring you to press down on the arms of the chair and push yourself up smoothly, all while betraying none of the considerable physical effort involved. At 10 minutes before 3, the family is in position. You are stationed in the front parlor, seated on the settee near the window. Just as you were instructed, the location has been chosen for the flattering quality of its natural light. Your mother sits in her designated chair nearby, her needlework providing a convenient prop to occupy her hands, and justify her presence. Your father stands by the fireplace, assuming a posture of casual authority, though his recurring glances at his pocket watch betray his underlying anticipation. The room is filled with the pleasant sense of beeswax polish and the fresh flowers you helped arrange this morning. The stage is set. The afternoon sun streams through the tall parlor windows, casting long shafts of light across the room. You hope the effect is as flattering as your mother promised it would be. On the mantelpiece, the clock ticks with agonizing slowness, each click of the second hand echoing in the quiet, expectant room. The seconds feel like minutes. Inside your white cotton gloves, your palms have grown slightly damp, and you must consciously resist the nervous urge to fidget with the fabric of your skirt or adjust the locket at your throat. This is it, the single knock on the door. When it comes, will mark the beginning of a process that has the power to define the entire remainder of your life. At precisely 3 o'clock, a firm, decisive knock sounds at the front door, breaking the tense silence. Your father, ever the patriarch, moves to open it himself. From the parlor, you can hear the low murmur of men's voices as they exchange formal greetings in the entrance hall. There is the rustle of heavy coats being removed, the sharp tap of walking sticks being placed carefully into the umbrella. Stand by the door. Then you hear footsteps approaching the parlor. Your heart begins to hammer against the rigid, whalebone stays of your corset, each beat a frantic drum against your ribs. The performance is about to begin in earnest. Mr. Weatherby, the patriarch, steps into the room first. He is a distinguished-looking man, with silvered whiskers framing his face, though he carries a slight stoop in his shoulders that speaks of long years spent hunched over account books. He is followed by his wife, Mrs. Weatherby, a pleasantly round woman whose burgundy silk dress and glittering jewelry immediately catch the afternoon light, broadcasting the family's prosperity. And finally, trailing his parents as etiquette dictates, Thomas himself steps across the threshold and into the parlor, his presence immediately becoming the room's focal point. The moment of inspection has truly begun. He is taller than you had imagined, with rich brown hair parted with geometric precision down the center of his head. His face is lean, framed by the fashionable mutton chop whiskers of the period. But what is most striking is the golden undertone of his skin, a clear souvenir from his years spent under the intense Indian sun, a detail that sets him apart from the pale Londoners. You know, there is a disciplined economy to his movements, a careful precision in his gestures that hints at a background of military training, or at least a life that demanded rigorous self-control. He moves with a purpose that is both quiet and commanding, a study in contained energy. His attire is the proper uniform for a gentleman of his station, paying a formal call. He wears a black frock coat that reaches his knees, tailored to fit his lean frame perfectly, paired with conservative gray trousers. His shirt is a brilliant white, but its most notable feature is the high, stiff collar that encircles his neck like a starched vise. It looks profoundly uncomfortable, a device designed to enforce a rigid, upright posture and prevent any overly familiar turn of the head. It is a potent symbol of the era's formality, a masculine counterpart to the corset in its power to constrain the body in the name of propriety, and it appears as if it might strangle him should he make any sudden movements. Mr. and Mrs. Weatherby, your father announces with formal gravity. May I present my wife, Mrs. Hartwell, and my daughter, Miss Eleanora Hartwell, on cue. You rise from the settee, your movements slow and deliberate as you manage the volume of your skirts. You execute a small curtsy, a gesture you have practiced 1,000 times. It is a minutely calibrated dip of the knees, accompanied by a slight, respectful inclination of your head. The depth of the curtsy is a critical social signal. Too deep would suggest an acknowledgement of lower status, while too shallow could be misinterpreted as disrespect. It must be, and is, perfectly measured. Mrs. Weatherby beams. Miss Hartwell, what a pleasure to finally meet you. Thomas has been quite eager for this introduction. Thomas himself then steps forward, offering a brief, formal bow from the waist. The correct masculine response to your curtsy. Miss Hartwell, he says. His voice is deeper than you anticipated, and it carries a subtle, unplaceable cadence, perhaps an echo of the accents he was surrounded by during his years overseas. You reply, Mr. Weatherby, meeting his eyes for a single, permissible instant before modestly lowering your gaze. To hold his stare any longer would be a shocking act of forwardness, a breach of the strict rules governing a young lady's conduct. The initial greetings concluded, everyone settles into their designated positions, moving with the practiced ease of actors, taking their marks on a familiar stage. The seating arrangement itself is a subtle architecture of propriety. Thomas is given the chair directly across from you, a placement that is close enough to allow for conversation, but far enough away to maintain the necessary decorum. The two sets of parents arrange themselves as the chaperones, a subtle but impassable barrier against any impropriety. They create a veneer of privacy by launching into their own discussion about mutual acquaintances and the news of the day, all while keeping a vigilant watch over the main interaction. You decide to initiate the conversation, choosing a topic that is both polite and suitably impersonal. I trust your journey from India was pleasant. You venture, knowing that inquiring about travel is an acceptable conversational gambit for a lady. Indeed, though it was rather lengthy, Thomas replies, his tone even. 3 months aboard a ship provides a man with ample time for reflection. He pauses, and you sense a complex emotion beneath the surface of his words. I found myself quite ready to return to English soil and to English society. The climate there can be quite challenging for those of us who are unaccustomed to such intensity. You nod with an expression of polite sympathy, though your own travels have never taken you further from London than the seaside town of Brighton. I can only imagine, you say. The heat must be quite overwhelming. We find ourselves complaining when our own summers reach a mere 70 degrees. This remark draws a small, yet genuine, smile from him, not the practiced social smile you have been taught, but one that actually reaches his eyes. Quite so, he agrees. In Bombay, we often saw temperatures well above 100 degrees, with a humidity that made the very air feel as thick as soup. He then confesses, I confess I developed a great appreciation for English rain during my time away. His honest and slightly humorous admission about the rain brings forth a genuine smile from you in return. Rain, you reply, is certainly something we have in great abundance here, and so the carefully structured conversational dance begins. He tells you about the bustling markets of Bombay, the exotic fruits he came to enjoy, and the immense challenge of managing a team of clerks who spoke a dozen different languages. You, in turn, share details from your own, much smaller and more sheltered world. The books you have been reading, the music you practice on the pianoforte, and your quiet observations about life in London. Each topic is carefully chosen, a safe and appropriate square on the conversational chess. All the while, you are following your mother's final, crucial piece of advice. You are not just talking, you are observing. You watch him closely, searching for those small but revealing clues to his true character. When Mary, the housemaid, enters the parlor to serve the tea, you notice that Thomas offers her a brief, polite nod of acknowledgement. It is a minor gesture, but one that many gentlemen of his class, who often saw servants as invisible, would not bother to make. And when your father makes a light-hearted joke about the famously fickle English weather, Thomas laughs not the forced, obligatory chuckle of social duty, but a sound of genuine amusement that visibly warms his entire face. A moment later, Mrs. Weatherby, in the midst of a fluttering gesture, accidentally knocks over her teacup. The cup and saucer clatter loudly against the table, sending a splash of hot liquid across its polished surface. Thomas immediately rises from his chair to offer assistance, producing a clean, white handkerchief from his pocket. Without needing to be asked, he is the image of calm and consideration. "Oh, how clumsy of me, Mrs. Weatherby exclaims, dabbing at the spill with her own napkin. "Not at all," your mother soothes, while Mary quickly materializes with a cloth to expertly manage the mess. "These things happen," she says, smoothing over the minor disruption. But in that brief moment of domestic chaos, you noticed something else, something far more significant than the spilled tea. When the teacup clattered to the floor, Thomas flinched. It was not a normal startled response, but something deeper, more visceral. For a fraction of a second, his hands tensed into fists, and his eyes darted instinctively toward the doorway, as if he were assessing a potential escape route. The reaction lasted only an instant before he regained his perfect composure, but you registered it, filing the observation away in your mind. It seems that sudden, loud noises affect him in a way that they probably shouldn't. The formal portion of the visit adheres strictly to the dictates of etiquette, lasting for precisely 1 hour. Any shorter a duration would signal a lack of interest. Any longer would be considered presumptuous on the part of the guests. As the Weatherbys prepare to take their leave, Thomas formally requests a brief, private word with your father. The two men step out into the hallway for a conversation that takes place just beyond your earshot, though it remains visible to everyone in the parlor. Through the open doorway, you watch your father nod several times, his expression serious, while Thomas speaks with earnest, carefully controlled gestures. After 5 minutes, they shake hands, a clear sign of a successful negotiation. Thomas returns to the parlor, his composure resolute. "Miss Hartwell," he says, addressing you directly, "with your father's permission, I would be most honored to call on you again." He pauses before proposing a specific time, perhaps on Sunday afternoon. If that would be agreeable to you, your heart performs a little skip inside your chest. This is the moment. This is the formal, sanctioned beginning of a proper courtship. All the unspoken potential of the last hour has now been ratified. With as much poise as you can muster, you reply, "That would be very pleasant, Mr. Weatherby." Your acceptance seals the arrangement. The moment the front door closes behind the departing guests, your parents begin their immediate post-visit analysis. "Well," your mother says, settling back into her chair with a look of satisfaction. "He seems quite the respectable young man." She begins to list his virtues as she observed them. He has good posture, his fingernails were clean, and he was polite to the servants, she adds. "And did you notice how quickly he rose to help when I spilled the tea? That shows true consideration." Your father then joins the discussion, adding his own assessment of the suitors' more practical qualifications. He has saved a very respectable sum during his time in India, he reports. Your father continues his positive assessment. He has enough capital to establish a household without requiring any financial assistance from either of our families, he says, a point of immense relief. And his prospects for advancement with the East India Company appear to be quite sound. But while your parents focus on this checklist of social and financial suitability, your own thoughts are elsewhere. You are thinking about that fleeting, almost imperceptible moment when the teacup fell. You are replaying his carefully controlled movements and the subtle tightness around his eyes. When he spoke of the challenging climate in India, there are layers to this man. You realize that the rigid, formal process of courtship is simply not designed to uncover. The following Sunday arrives with a bout of unseasonably warm weather for late May. This time, there is no corset crisis, no nervous breakfast. You are beginning to understand the established rhythm of these formal visits. Thomas arrives at your door precisely at 2 o'clock, and in his hand, he carries a small, delicate bouquet of flowers. This type of gift is deemed acceptable under the strict rules of etiquette, unlike jewelry or books, which would suggest a far too serious intent. For this early stage, flowers are seen as a modest and temporary offering, a gentle gesture of admiration that does not overstep the bounds of propriety. He offers you the flowers with a slight, formal bow. Miss Hartwell, I noticed these sweet peas growing in my mother's garden, and thought you might enjoy them. They are delicate blossoms of purple and white, and they smell of springtime and innocence. As you reach out to take them from him, your gloved fingers brush against his. For the briefest of moments, the fleeting contact sends a tiny, surprising jolt of electricity through you, a feeling that has nothing to do with the static from your wool dress. They are lovely, you say, quickly burying your face in the fragrant petals to hide the warm blush that you can feel rising in your cheeks. Sweet peas are my favorites, his reply. I had hoped they might be Carrie's. A tone that suggests his choice was anything but casual. This second visit feels markedly different from the first. With the initial, stiff formalities now out of the way, the conversation flows more easily and naturally. At one point, during a quiet lull, Thomas makes a confession that catches you completely by surprise. I confess, he says, his gaze distant for a moment. I find London quite overwhelming after 4 years, spent in smaller communities. The constant noise, the sheer size of the crowds, the frantic pace of everything. He looks at you and adds with a surprising honesty, sometimes I wonder if I have forgotten how to be properly English. This admission of uncertainty, of a kind of weakness, is something gentlemen are simply not supposed to express. His vulnerability is unexpected, and you choose your response with care. Perhaps you suggest gently, it is not a matter of being properly English, but rather of finding your own way of being English. Now, you can see that your words have surprised him. 4 years is a very long time, you continue. You have had experiences that most of us here cannot even begin to imagine. It is only natural that you would feel changed by them. He looks at you with an expression of genuine astonishment, as if he had braced himself for a platitude, but received true understanding instead. You are very perceptive, Miss Hartwell, he says, his voice filled with a newfound respect. Over the course of the following weeks, these Sunday afternoon visits become an established and cherished routine. Thomas calls every Sunday at precisely 2 o'clock, and he stays for exactly the prescribed 1 hour. Sometimes you sit in the formal parlor, making polite conversation. Other times, you are permitted to walk together in the small garden behind your house. In either case, your mother or your maiden Aunt Caroline is always present, a vigilant chaperone positioned just within sight. The conversations, though still bounded by the strict limits of propriety, grow progressively deeper and more personal with each passing week. You learn that Thomas suffers from nightmares, a fact he mentions obliquely to explain his tired appearance. As you grow more comfortable with each other, you both begin to share more of your carefully guarded inner worlds. He tells you about the strange and wonderful foods he learned to enjoy during his time in India, the vibrant festivals he witnessed, and the immense complexity of managing business relationships across profound cultural divides. He even confesses to writing poetry, though he admits he is far too embarrassed to share any of it with you. In return, you offer him glimpses into your own secret thoughts, your deep frustration with the severe limitations placed on a woman's education, your clandestine ambition to travel and see places beyond the smoky borders of London, and your sincere love of novels, though you are careful not to mention the more scandalous titles you secretly borrow from a friend. During your fourth Sunday visit, in the middle of a quiet and pleasant conversation, Thomas makes a request that causes your pulse to quicken. With a mixture of excitement and apprehension, he glances discreetly toward your mother, who is absorbed in her needlework nearby, before turning back to you. Miss Hartwell, he begins, his tone formal, but his eyes earnest. I was wondering if you might consent to accompany me to the exhibition at the Crystal Palace next Saturday. He adds the crucial caveat immediately. With proper chaperonage, naturally this is a significant escalation. Attending a public event of this nature together is a major step, a semi-public declaration that you are officially keeping company. Your mother's needle pauses mid-stitch as she waits to hear your response. I would be delighted, Mr. Weatherby, you reply, doing your best to keep your voice steady, despite the flutter of excitement in your chest. The Crystal Palace is the pinnacle of modern marvels. It was originally built for the Great Exhibition of 1851 and was so beloved that it was later dismantled and rebuilt on an even grander scale on Sydenham Hill in South London. To the people of the era, it represents everything new, modern, and exciting about the Victorian age. The building itself is a breathtaking cathedral of iron and glass, a fairy tale palace that seems to be constructed from light and air, filled with gardens, fountains, and technological wonders from across the globe. Saturday arrives, a bright, clear day perfect for an outing. You are dressed in your absolute finest, a gown of deep blue silk that took your mother 6 long months of saving to afford. It is paired with a matching jacket and a small, stylish hat adorned with ribbons. Thomas arrives with a hired open carriage, a landau, which allows for the thrill of traveling together, while still providing full visibility for proper supervision. Selected for this important duty is your Aunt Caroline, a woman renowned for her stern demeanor and her eagle-eyed vigilance. She settles herself into the facing seat, wearing her most forbidding expression and her sharpest hat, the one with the aggressive feathers that seem to point accusingly at anyone who might even contemplate an impropriety. As the carriage climbs Sydenham Hill, leaving the crowded, industrial neighborhoods of South London behind, the Crystal Palace emerges before you like a shimmering apparition. It is a structure of impossible scale and beauty, a dazzling spectacle of Victorian confidence. The enormous building, a true cathedral of light, seems to capture the afternoon sun and shatter it into 1,000 brilliant sparkles. It rises from the meticulously manicured gardens that stretch out in all directions, their elaborate flower beds forming intricate, colorful patterns. Forgetting for a moment the need for ladylike reserve, you can only breathe a single, astonished word. Magnificent, it is a testament to the era's boundless faith in iron, glass, and human ingenuity. It is during a brief respite from your explorations that the day's most significant event unfolds. While your Aunt Caroline is thoroughly occupied with a cup of tea and the methodical demolition of a currant scone, Thomas seizes the opportunity. Leaning slightly closer, he lowers his voice to a conspiratorial whisper that only you can hear. Miss Hartwell, he begins, I hope you will not think me presumptuous, but I find myself growing quite attached to these Saturday excursions. He pauses, then adds with clear intent, and to your company, your heart, which had been beating at a calm rhythm, suddenly stops, then restarts at double its previous speed. This is no longer polite conversation. This is the dangerous territory of a serious declaration. You instinctively glance toward your aunt, but she remains blissfully absorbed in her refreshments, a perfect portrait of oblivious chaperonage. I have enjoyed them as well. Mr. Weatherby, you reply quietly, your voice barely audible above the clatter of the tea room. Encouraged, he begins again. I had hoped, but then he stops himself, visibly wrestling with the constraints of propriety. That is, I wonder if you might consider, but perhaps this is not the proper venue for such discussions in this moment. You understand him perfectly. He is testing the waters, masterfully redirecting the conversation toward the correct protocol, without forcing you into a premature answer in this public setting. A current of silent communication, more powerful than any spoken words, passes between you by not rejecting his implied suit, but instead suggesting that such important discussions require a more appropriate and private setting. You are sending a clear signal. The relief that washes over his features is palpable, mixed with something deeper, a burgeoning affection, and a clear sense of anticipation for what is to come. He understands that your response is not a refusal, but an acceptance of the proper, established sequence of events. The rest of the afternoon passes in a happy, dreamlike blur, the air between you now charged with the certainty of an approaching, life-altering question. A few days later, on a Tuesday evening, a fierce thunderstorm rattles the windows of your house, sending sheets of rain hammering against the glass. You are in the parlor with your mother, quietly working on embroidery by the warm glow of the lamps, when the front doorbell rings with an unexpected urgency. It is past 8 o'clock, far too late for any normal social calls. When Mary appears in the doorway, her expression flustered, you know instantly that something momentous is happening. Begging your pardon, ma'am, she says to your mother, but Mr. Thomas Weatherby is at the door. He says he must speak with the master on a matter of great urgency. The unexpected visit on such a wild night electrifies the tranquil domestic scene. Your mother's eyebrows rise nearly to her hairline in astonishment. Your father appears from his study, equally puzzled, a newspaper still clutched in his hand. Through the parlor window, you can just make out the shape of Thomas's hired carriage, waiting in the relentless downpour. After a moment's consideration, your father directs Mary to show the visitor into his study. The subsequent conversation lasts for nearly 20 minutes, an agonizing eternity, as you sit with your embroidery forgotten in your lap, your heart beating a frantic rhythm. Finally, the study door opens. Your father enters the parlor, alone, but the expression of deep satisfaction on his face gives everything away before he even speaks a word. Eleanor, he says, his voice laced with relief. Mr. Weatherby has formally requested my permission to pay his addresses to you. I have given my consent. The embroidery hoop slides from your nerveless fingers. This is it. Thomas wishes to marry you. But as the initial wave of shock and excitement subsides, you find yourself contemplating the profound gravity of what this truly means. Marriage in 1855 is not merely a romantic partnership you can dissolve if things do not work out. It is a profound legal transaction. The moment you say, I do, your independent legal existence is effectively extinguished under the doctrine of coverture. Any property you own becomes his property. Any money you earn becomes his money. Even the children you might bear will belong, in the eyes of the law, entirely to him, not to you. It is a complete surrender of your legal and financial autonomy. You weigh this stark reality against your available choices, which are painfully limited. At 22, you are already approaching the age where society will begin to whisper that you are on the shelf, a spinster, destined to be a burden on your family. Your parents cannot afford to support you indefinitely, and in a world where many, if not most, marriages are conducted as purely pragmatic business arrangements, the prospect of a union that contains genuine, demonstrated affection feels like an extraordinary stroke of good fortune. Thomas appears to be kind, intelligent, and sincerely fond of you. In the face of your limited options, his proposal feels less like a choice and more like a lifeline. The following afternoon, Thomas arrives, looking as nervous as you feel. He is dressed in his finest black coat and a white shirt with a collar so stiff it seems a marvel of engineering. He carries a small, square velvet box that makes your stomach perform a series of complicated acrobatic maneuvers. The scene is set just as it was for your very first meeting. You are seated on the settee. Your mother is positioned in her corner chair with her needlework, a silent but official supervisor. The illusion of privacy is maintained, but the air is thick with the finality of the moment. Thomas takes the chair across from you, his hands trembling just slightly as he removes his gloves. He clears his throat, the sound loud in the quiet room. Miss Hartwell, he begins formally, then stops, takes a deep breath, and starts again, this time with a new intimacy. Eleonora, if I may, the use of your first name is a significant and deliberate step across a previously unbreachable line. I have, as you know, spoken with your father, and now, with his permission, I would like to speak directly to your heart. This is the moment when all the carefully constructed formalities of the past weeks fall away. You can only nod, not trusting yourself to speak, as he prepares to make his formal declaration. The entire future hinges on the words he is about to say. He continues, his voice gaining a measure of confidence. These past weeks of knowing you have been among the happiest of my entire life. Your intelligence, your kindness, your remarkable strength of character, all of these qualities have made me realize that I simply cannot imagine my future without you in it. With that, he gracefully slides from his chair and kneels on one knee on the rug beside the settee. He opens the velvet box, displaying it in his hands. Eleonora Hartwell, he asks, his voice thick with emotion, would you do me the tremendous honor of becoming my wife? Inside the box, nestled in silk, is a modest but beautiful ring, a small, sparkling diamond, surrounded by a halo of tiny, lustrous pearls, all set in yellow gold. The ring is not a flashy, ostentatious piece of jewelry. It is tasteful and clearly chosen with great care, representing a significant financial outlay. For a man of Thomas's position, it is a testament to the sincerity of his intentions. Yes, you manage to whisper, the word barely audible. Then, finding your voice, you repeat it with more conviction. Yes, Thomas, I would be honored to accept. The relief that floods his face is so palpable that it almost makes you laugh. He takes your left hand in his, the first time your bare hands have ever touched, and gently slides the engagement ring onto your fourth finger. The warmth of his skin against yours sends a delightful shiver up your arm. Becoming officially engaged brings with it an immediate and dramatic shift in the rules that have governed your interactions. The rigid constraints of early courtship relax, granting you new and exciting privileges. Chief among these is the permission to take unchaperoned walks together. The very first time you step out of the house with Thomas, your hand resting lightly on his arm, without the familiar shadow of your mother or aunt trailing behind you, it feels like the most thrillingly daring and grown-up thing you have ever done in your life. This newfound freedom to converse, without measuring every single word for a chaperone's ear, is both liberating and intoxicating. Along with the freedom of unchaperoned walks comes another new and profoundly significant privilege. You are now permitted to hold hands. This simple, innocent gesture of intimacy feels utterly revolutionary after so many months of maintaining a careful, enforced distance. The first time it happens, you are sitting together on the parlor settee, looking through a book of engravings of India that he has brought to show you. His fingers tentatively intertwine with yours, his hand warm and slightly calloused. The contact feels so surprisingly natural and right that it takes your breath away. Is this proper, you ask, your voice a whisper, though you make no move to pull your hand away. Perfectly proper, he assures you, for an engaged couple. In accordance with Victorian tradition, your engagement also marks the beginning of a regular correspondence. When Thomas's work requires him to travel to his company's offices in Manchester for a week, you find yourselves learning to communicate your feelings through the written word. His first letter begins, "My dearest Eleonora, I have been gone only 2 days, yet I find myself missing our conversations more than I could have anticipated," he writes of the noisy, industrial city, confessing that he would trade all its bustling energy for another quiet walk through your neighborhood park. This new form of communication quickly becomes a vital part of your deepening bond. These letters become the foundation upon which a deeper, more resilient intimacy is built. You discover that in writing, freed from the constraints of formal, face-to-face conversation, you are both able to express yourselves with a new eloquence and honesty. Thomas writes of his hopes for your shared future, his plans for the house he will rent for you in Kensington, and his ongoing, sometimes difficult, readjustment to English life after his long sojourn abroad. You, in turn, find that you can share your own fears and vulnerabilities more freely on paper, articulating your anxieties and excitements about married life in a way you never could in the parlor. The summer passes in a whirlwind of preparations for the wedding. Your life is suddenly consumed by a seemingly endless series of fittings for your wedding dress, and for the extensive new wardrobe, the trousseau, that you will bring into your married life. The dress itself is a magnificent confection of brilliant white silk and delicate Brussels lace. Its cost is staggering, more than your father's shop earns in 2 full months, but such an expense is considered an absolute necessity. It is a public statement, a crucial investment in maintaining the family's social standing and demonstrating its respectability to the world. Parallel to the fittings and social planning, you undertake a rigorous, practical education in the art of household management. Your formal schooling only touched upon these essential skills, but now you must master them. The family cook patiently teaches you how to plan weekly menus, how to manage food budgets to avoid waste, and how to select the best produce from the local merchants. Mary, the housemaid, instructs you in the proper care of fine linens and imparts the secret methods for removing every imaginable type of stain. Your mother drills you relentlessly on the complex social obligations you will soon face as a married woman, from hosting dinner parties to managing servants. Perhaps the most important part of your premarital education comes not from practical instruction, but from the frank and private counsel of the married women in your social circle. Your Aunt Margaret, who has been married for 15 years, takes you aside for a series of conversations that no one else seems willing to have. Marriage, she tells you, her tone blunt and devoid of sentimentality, is not like the romantic novels make it seem. There will be wonderful moments, of course, but there will also be difficult ones. Your husband will have moods you cannot comprehend, and you will have days when you question what you have gotten yourself into. This dose of realism is a necessary antidote to your girlish fantasies. During one of these private talks, your aunt approaches the subject that is on your mind, but which you would never dare to ask about directly. And Eleonora, she says, her voice dropping lower, there are aspects of married life that no one discusses openly, but that you need to understand. Her gaze is both kind and serious. I am speaking of the Physical aspects, your face burns with a hot flush of embarrassment, but you force yourself to listen intently as your aunt explains, using a series of careful and delicate euphemisms, what will be expected of you as a wife. It is not the romantic, idealized picture painted by the poets you have read, but it is practical, essential information that you desperately need. On the eve of your wedding, you lie awake in your childhood bedroom for the very last time. Your magnificent wedding dress hangs on the wardrobe door, its white silk and lace appearing almost luminous in the moonlight, a beautiful ghost of the future self you will become in the morning. For 22 years, this room has been your entire world, a safe harbor of familiarity. In just a few hours, you will put on that dress, and in doing so, you will trade the identity of Eleanora Hartwell for an entirely new existence as Mrs. Thomas Weatherby. You listen to the familiar sounds of the house, settling for the night, feeling a profound sense of an ending, a final, quiet turning of a page in the book of your life. The wedding ceremony itself seems to pass by in a surreal, dreamlike blur of ancient, solemn words and ritualized responses. You hear your own voice, sounding distant and unfamiliar, as you promise to love, honor, and, as is customary, to obey. You pledge to cleave only unto Thomas, forsaking all others, and to accept him as your lawfully wedded husband, until death should part you. The immense weight of these lifelong vows settles upon your shoulders like a heavy velvet cloak, but as Thomas gently takes your hand to slip his mother's simple gold wedding band onto your finger, his touch is steady and warm, a silent reassurance in the midst of the overwhelming ceremony. At that moment, it is official. You are now legally and socially his wife. The carriage ride from your family home to your new life in Kensington is filled with a whirlwind of emotion. After the tearful goodbyes on your parents' front steps, you finally arrive at the small but respectable house that is now yours. Smoke curls welcomingly from the chimney, a sign that the housekeeper Thomas has hired is expecting you. As Thomas helps you from the carriage, the front door opens, revealing a comfortable-looking woman in her 50s. "Welcome home, Mrs. Weatherby," she says with a kind smile. The name sounds foreign and strange in your ears. It is the first time you have been addressed by this new title, the starkest reminder, yet that Eleanora Hartwell no longer truly exists. That first evening, after a quiet dinner, you find yourselves alone together in the parlor of your new home. The domestic tranquility feels fragile, underpinned by your nervous awareness of what is expected to happen when you retire for the night. Sensing your anxiety, Thomas sets aside his newspaper and speaks softly. "Eleanora," he says, his voice filled with a surprising tenderness, "I want you to know that I understand this is all very new and overwhelming. For you," he hesitates, choosing his words with care. "We needn't. That is, there is no pressure for anything to happen quickly." His gentle consideration in this strange and awkward situation touches you more deeply than any grand romantic gesture ever could. In the quiet moments of your new life, you often reflect on the peculiar and elaborate social machinery that brought you and Thomas together. The rigid etiquette books, the ever-present chaperones, the formal, ritualized dance of courtship. It all seems impossibly quaint and restrictive from your new vantage point. Yet, you have come to believe that, for all its artificiality, the system served a vital purpose. It provided a structured framework within which two relative strangers could carefully evaluate each other's character, temperament, and values before making the irreversible, lifelong commitment of marriage. It forced a patience and a gradual discovery, allowing you to know each other's minds before you ever knew physical intimacy, building a foundation of respect that you now realize is the true bedrock of a lasting love.